Hello everyone again, and welcome to another Torah Watchman series, this time in the field and a very dense commute going home on the DC Beltway. Isn't that wonderful? Baruch Hashem. Yeah, Torah Watchman 95. Why am I doing a video in the middle of traffic? Well, I can't go anywhere far and it's safe because I'm barely moving, right? Anyway, breaking news today. The Prime Minister in Jordan, Omar Razaz, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, recommended something that's been recommended before. It's not going to go anywhere. But anyway, he says there should be a dual Palestinian/Israeli state. In other words, people can live in a democracy equally as equal vetted citizens, equal rights and benefits, and everyone would say to Tikkun Olam, right? Well, there's a problem with that idea, even though it may sound logical to some of you that don't understand Jewish history, understand the Palestinian mission statement, which you can look at the Hamas Charter in Gaza. Yeah, wipe every Jew off the face of the planet or drive them into the sea. Yeah, extermination has been tried and done before, okay? Anyway, what he said is said if the Trump peace plan does not go the way that Israelis expect, or the Palestinians, or Mahmoud Abbas, the Prime Minister, the President of the Palestinian administration, or whatever, if it doesn't go the way that people like, well, there's another option. That's the dual Palestinian-Israeli state. Folks, as soon as that happened, that would be a green light to every Palestinian refugee camp in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, in Egypt, wherever. There will come Aliyah to Israel, and eventually, if they're dual citizens, they can vote to win a parliament seat, yes, in the Knesset, and vote out all the Jews out of power. And by that way, de facto, they'll be able to take over the entire nation and drive the Jews out. Listen, democracy, Jeffersonian democracy that has worked so well in our country for 244 years, more or less, is alien to the typical Muslim Islamic mind worldview, okay? It's not in the Quran. It's not historically in anything to do with Islam for the last 1,500 years, more or less. It's not... Say democracy for Islam, it's just like, the Arab Spring in Syria and the Obama administration, the Arab Spring in Egypt, the Arab Spring in Libya. It's gonna be it's a democracy movement. No. Listen, these are just buzzwords to try to get the West and Europe to listen. Let's talk about international law. Okay, first of all, any Jewish settlements in the West Bank, aka Samaria, is considered a breach of international law. What does that mean? That's the United Nations. And what is the United Nations comprised of? More than 50% of the nations that compose the United Nations, including Turkey, yes, are Muslim nations, yes, Islamic nations, yes. When you had that many players that hate Israel and don't even believe in the Holocaust, and don't even formally acknowledge Israel's right to exist as a Jewish nation, they get to make up funny, not so funny things like apartheid state, international law violation, and all this stuff. In other words, the occupation of any area in the West Bank. There are many more Palestinians in the West Bank than Israeli settlers. You can do the math. I think about something like 60,000 to maybe 15,000 Israeli settlers. You see the disproportion there in the relationship. Okay? Now, there's fighting right now in Eretz Israel, in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and of course in Gaza. Yeah, they like to launch hundreds and hundreds of missiles at innocent civilians and school children too, and they've done that many times before. And they have not ever been condemned internationally, but it's the same international group that condemns Jews every chance they get, right? That's how it goes. Now, you can look at my other videos. I don't have to go down memory lane right now. But, 1967, this is when Israel really enlarged their territory. Hey, folks, and when you win a war, you get you get the tokens of war. I mean, you get awards of war. You occupy territory and things of that nature. The thing is, Israel moved into territory, you can call it occupation if you want to legally, that they were native in for thousands of years. About 3,300, 400 years of Jews. We've always been there. Yisrael high. I mean, go back to 1917 and the Great Britain during that time, at the beginning of World War I, there was the Balfour Declaration, November 2nd, 1917. It was ratified. Do you know what was in the Balfour Declaration? You know where Jordan is today? Well, all of that, plus Israel today, going down to Gaza and everywhere else, so even part of the Sinai Peninsula, would be all given to the Jewish people. Folks, that was never really ratified. It was a document of truth, a statement. They wanted the Jews to have a national place, of a safe haven where they could be, away from being driven out by the czars of Russia from place to place to place, okay? If the Balfour Declaration would have been implemented, we wouldn't have this discussion about Jordan or Palestinians today. In fact, there would be descendants of 6 million Jews that were murdered in the Holocaust. They wouldn't have been murdered. So you consider all of this here, okay? You can go back in 1946. Jordan became a nation, first time in history. It was just pretty much, it was an agreement, a legacy, a throwback from the past between Great Britain and helping Great Britain's soldiers and our military to drive out the Ottoman Turks out of Palestine. Okay, folks, long, short, in conclusion, there's no such thing as a Palestinian state. The word Palestinian means invader. Okay, it was invented by Hadrian, the emperor, going back to around 135 CE. That's Common Era. Okay, it was invented to de-Jewish all of Eretz Israel. You can read it. It's all history, and this is not propaganda. It's not about my feelings. It's all history. It has nothing to do with religion either. Archaeological digs and historical truth and science can prove everything I'm saying to be true. Read a book. It may be good for your health. But anyway, Golda Meir, in her time in the 1960s, a blessed memory, said there's no Palestinian people. There's no dispute over Palestinian because they don't exist. Folks, you have to own property to say you have ownership of it, okay? Listen. All these people that call themselves Palestinians are actually Jordanians, okay? These people, these people have ancestors going back about more than 1,000 years in Eretz Israel, in Judea and Samaria, okay? They have descendants there. They probably have relatives buried in the ground there. Understand why they want to continue living there, but understand what they are and what they aren't, okay? They say they're a Palestinian. They say they're a native to the land. Well, that's not so true. Native until when, okay? Native until what, 1946, 1930? Folks, the word Palestinian was only applied by the Ottoman Turks, that's Turkey of today, Asia Minor, was applied to the native Jews that were living in that area, in the Eretz Israel territory at that time. Okay? Palestinian was never applied before 1946 or 1964, was never applied to anyone else living in that land other than the Jewish people. Okay? In 1948, we called ourselves Hebrews, Jews, Zionists, whatever. Theodore Herzl, wrote the book on Zionism, and he said it very well. But anyway, listen, the Prime Minister of Razaz, he does not have the Jews' best interest in mind. Benjamin Netanyahu, for the last 3 election cycles, promised to annex a territory. He still hasn't done it. God's redirected him. Let's focus on eliminating COVID. Folks, there's a virus. There's no cure for it. You can treat it through a vaccine. Listen, it is what it is. But anyway, the best thing we can do for peace, long-term peace in the land, It's to for formally have a sovereignty plan for the Jewish people. There's only one nation for the Jews on the planet. There's 51 nations, Arab, Islamic nations that surround the whole area. You take North Africa and the Middle East and everywhere. Yeah, if the Palestinians want a homeland, why does it Jordan, aka Palestine, why doesn't Jordan actually allow the Palestinians to go there? Why? Because the Hasmoneans there, they don't want anything to do with the Palestinians. Pretty much the Saudi Arabia does not want anything to do with them. The Egyptians doesn't want to do anything. Why? Because their version of democracy is to maim and destroy and to kill and to rape and to burn. Okay? I'm sorry. You can look up the history. You can blame this on the IDF for murdering Palestinians. You've seen the cartoons, you know, and Pallywood and Gaza and all of this stuff. You've seen all the propaganda. They refer to Israel as as a apartheid state. Again, that's a misnomer. That came from South Africa. Listen, yes, there were Caucasian whites, as white as I am, that were in ownership as a minority people race in South Africa for a long time. I mean, as a colony or whatever, they were in control of that. And yes, there was an apartheid situation there. The difference between that, South Africa, and Israel in context is that the Jews, okay, the Sabra Jews there, have always been there. They're the only ones going back 3,000 years that can say, I'm a native, a person in the land, okay? They're the only one who can say that with any truth or accuracy. As far as Palestinians, they have folks there, Jordanians, they're Syrians, with some Egyptians thrown in there. We are all cousins, right? Semitic peoples. Of course, Islam is incredibly diverse. It's just diverse as Christianity. There are Africans that are Muslims. There are Greeks, there are Japanese, there are Chinese, there are Americans, there are French Muslims. It's not all Arabs, okay, when you think about Muslims. So it's not a racial kind of thing. As far as apartheid and water supply and feeding rights over cattle and sheep and things of that nature, yes, there's a lot of issues the way the Palestinian settlement areas are controlled or locked down by the Israeli military in West Bank. Folks, the reason why it's locked down, try to be a Jew driving into Rafah or any other Hebron or any of these Palestinian controlled areas and see if you come out alive, okay? Listen, and back in 1964, Yasser Arafat, Egyptian-born Arafat, you know, essentially took the Jordanian flag and lopped a star on it and called it a Palestinian flag and all of this. If he would have advocated a mission statement, a charter, a constitution of living with their Jewish brothers and sisters and cousins or whatever you call it, living in peace and shalom and everything else, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Yes, there would be roads in Palestinian settlement areas linking roads in Israeli settlement areas, and there would be free trade and all this other good stuff that we enjoy in America. However, the Palestinians have not taken terrorism, violent Islamic jihad off the table. If you don't take violence and killing and maiming and destroying of civilians off the table, how can you have any discussion on the water rights of the Jordanian river valley? Very fertile there. It also has a strategic overview of all the land there. You can see an approaching terrorist army, paramilitary forces assembling a sound like rocket site or whatever to kill civilians. Listen, the only solution that's sustainable, that's supported both by history, by archaeology, and science, and I'm not even talking about religion, is sovereignty of Israel. It's a novel idea. I don't have a problem with sovereignty in America, okay? Even American Indians here don't have a problem with sovereignty because they live in their own nation chunks of land and territories throughout the United States, okay? I have Cherokee Indian blood within me, Baruch Hashem. I'm saying there's been a lot of wars with the Native Americans, a lot of horrible things, Trail of Tears and all of this, but they have agreed not to do acts of violence to get what they want. They have Indians in Congress and Senate and other echelons of government if they want to improve something in relationships between American citizens and Native American, then they can do it through the democratic process. Hey, this works in America very well, okay? Even though there's disparities in how Indians, employment and all of this stuff, mental illness and all of this stuff, but still, you cannot apply that what's going on in Israel. Folks, it's a very painful situation. Ariful just received recently payments or whatever. He was murdered 2 years ago by Palestinian activists. Listen, no death penalty being enforced for this anyway, but I can talk about this on and on, but the main point is Prime Minister Omar Razaz, listen, he's just speaking on both sides of his mouth. You can't say living equal in a democratic single dual state. It just cancels out all his words anyway. Listen, you can listen to Ben Shapiro, he's saying the same thing, and other people's are articulated much better than this Jew can. Listen, I want everyone to live in peace. We want Tikkun Olam. We want to make the world a better place. We want Refuah Shlema for healing. There are Palestinians that died for COVID, for instance, as much as Jews have, and there are people that have been suffering. Okay, I want everyone to live at peace. However, you have to stop malingering the Quran and malingering and misinterpreting the Quran and what Muhammad, their great prophet of Allah, said to be true. And you read the Quran, it says that the land of Israel belongs to the Jews. It's what it says, okay? And they talk about Moses in the Quran more than they talk about Muhammad. Go figure. Listen, there's a lot of misinterpretation of the Quran, a lot of version, commentary, and all this stuff. The original Quran, I hear, was destroyed or whatever because they didn't like what it said and they didn't like its ontology and everything else. Anyway, you can read that in history too about Petra versus Becca versus Mecca. Anyway, don't get me started. Listen, Baruch Hashem, take care of yourself. Please click subscribe and click like. And please comment, okay? Sorry I cannot do this so professionally in the traffic and everything else. Listen, God bless you. God love you. Whether you're an Arab, Jew, Muslim, atheist, whatever, Christian, whatever, no hide, whatever you are. Listen, peace, okay? Let's all try to get along. Take care. Goodbye.